Hi guys, this is your girl Wakeji Kamore and welcome to Reflections by Wakeji Kamore. Today we are going to be looking at Job chapter 4. If you haven't read this chapter for yourself, please read it so that even when I'm going through the chapter, you can understand what's going on. You're not just wondering, what is this girl talking about? But if you haven't read the chapter, again, read it. There's no true way around it. You have to be obedient. Pause this recording and read the chapter. But in chapter 4, we see Eliphaz speaking. So remember that Job is going through a really difficult season of his life. He has lost everything, and now on top of that, he has sores from the top of his head to the sole of his feet. I don't even know how this guy is sitting down. I really can't even comprehend the pain that he is in. And we see in chapter 3 that, Job vents and says he wishes he wasn't born, and also concludes to say whatever it is that he was most afraid of has happened. So today we are going to be looking at the fact that now his friends want to start speaking. Remember, they have been with him silent for 7 good days until Job broke the silence and spoke in his vent. And then now we're going to be seeing the first friend speak, and his name is Eliphaz. And I'm going to be reading this chapter, and I'm going to read it from I'm going to be reading and pausing to say what I think my takeouts are, not what I think, what my takeouts are from this chapter, what I am understanding as I'm reading it, and what it is that we can take out from this chapter. So if you have read, I'm hoping that you have read the chapter. Please join in as I read it again, and I'm reading from the easy to read version, which is the ESV version. All right, let's do this. It says, Eliphaz from Teman, it starts with Eliphaz speaks. Eliphaz from Teman answered, I must say something. Would it upset you if I speak? Let me just pause right there. Every single time a person says, I hope I don't offend you, because basically that's what he's saying in this verse. I hope I don't offend you by the things that I have to say, but me, I have to say something. It's basically saying, me, I can't keep silent anymore. I have to speak. I have to say something. 7 days of silence, Imesha. Now I have something to say, and I have to say it, and I hope that it doesn't offend you. Every time someone says, I hope it doesn't offend you, prepare yourself. You're about to be offended. You're about to be offended. Or when someone says something and then says, oh, that's just my opinion, or that's just my understanding, that's just me. Why would you do? You are going to be offended, or whatever has already been said has been offended. Or someone says, oh, no offense, you have been offended. Well, these are just disclaimers. So anyway, Eliphaz gives a disclaimer and says, I hope I'm not going to upset you. All right. In verse 3, it continues to say, Job, you have taught many people. You have encouraged those who are ready to quit. Your words helped those who are ready to fall. You have given strength to those who could not stand by themselves. But now trouble comes to you and you are discouraged. Trouble hits you and you're upset. You worship God, you trust Him, you're a good man, so let that be your hope. Let's watch Certification verse 6. There's something that I learned when I was an intern at Mavuno Church. They used to teach us that sometimes when you need to give someone bad news, you need to do a sandwich illustration. Like you have to give a good comment. Then in there, katikati, those nyamas, you put the things that you need to say, then you end with something good. So that's basically what Eliphaz is doing here. He starts with the compliment. It starts with commending Job of how good he has been, how he has encouraged other people, he has taught other people, he has helped other people, he's given people strength. So that's just what happens in verse 3 to 6. It's just basically giving Job his flowers and telling him, you have really been a good person. Verse 7 is where it starts to go down. Verse 7 is where it starts to go south. Because again, remember, as I said in the introduction of the book of Job, I said that these 3 friends, together with Job, are trying to find out, is God just? And does God operate this? Does God run this universe on a strict principle of justice versus, like if you are a good person, you get good things. If you're a bad person, you get suffering. Like, is that what they're trying to say? And I told you that his friends are trying to say that God actually God is just, and that He runs this world on a strict principle of justice. That means if you do something wrong, you get punished. And so they're trying to say that the reason why Job is going through suffering is because he is a sinner. He's done something wrong. And at some point we'll see that they'll even cook up sins and propose maybe these are the sins that you committed and this is why you are suffering. And of course, we will see that doesn't sit very well with Job. So anyway, this is why it starts to go down. In verse 7, it says, can you think of any innocent person who was ever destroyed? That's basically just said, if you have been destroyed, if you're going through something, you're not innocent. That's basically what he's saying to Job. Do you know of any place where good people are punished? So that means if Job is being punished, and what we are seeing is that really he's going through it all, means he's not a good person. And then he bases his argument on his personal experience. In verse 8, he says, yes, I have seen people whose lives were cut short, but they were evil troublemakers. So basically, he's basing his argument on what he has seen or his personal experience. He's saying he's seen people whose lives have been cut short, but those people are not good people. He says that they have lost the breath of God that God gave them, and they were cut off from his breath of life, and they were like growing lions with broken teeth, like a lioness that cannot find prey, and they died and their cub starved to death. Basically what he's saying is that in his life he has seen bad people be destroyed. So that means because Job seemingly is being destroyed, he must be a bad person. Basically, that is what Eliphaz is saying. And no wonder alikuwa anasema, I hope this doesn't offend you, because he knew he was about to offend Job. In verse 12, it says, I happened to hear a message. So now, the first part, he says that he bases it on his life experience, what he has seen in the world before. Now, from this verse going on, he was like, okay, maybe my life experience is not working. Let me base it on something else. And he starts to say that he has seen it in a dream. He had a voice. Like those things of God spoke to me. Those things. And I'm not against God speaking. I mean, God really speaks to people. But there are people who, when they try to persuade you to do something and they can see it's not working, they now start to say, I have an inclination. I have a, like God has spoken to me. I feel it heavy in my heart. Like they wanataka kuongeza uzito to the persuading that they want to persuade, or they want to add authority and more what is it? Authority. What is the word authority? They want to add more credit. Actually, more credit. They want to add more credit to the opinion, and that is exactly what Eliphaz does here. He says in verse 12, he says, I happened to hear a message. My ears caught a whisper of it, like a bad dream in the night. It ruined my sleep. It frightened me, and I trembled down to my bones. This was such an experience. I went through such an experience to hear this message. And that's exactly, just listen. A spirit passed by my face, and the hair on my body stood up. The spirit stood still, but I could not see what it was. A shape stood before my eyes. And there was silence, and I heard a quiet voice. A person cannot be more. So this is, remember, he's trying to give credit to whatever it is that his argument is. And his argument is, if you're going through suffering, you're a bad person. Period. That is his argument and his understanding of why Job is going through whatever it is going through. And he says, I had a quiet voice. So he had a dream, and it was a really, shaky dream. It was like, things, that it instilled fear. His hair on his body stood, his spirit stood. He saw a shape standing, like a shape or a shadow standing before his eyes. And then he had a quiet voice that said, a person cannot be more right than God. People cannot be more pure than their maker. Look, God cannot even trust his heavenly servants. So let me tell you, one of the things that makes the book of Job very controversial or very hard to understand is that some parts of what is said is true. Then some part of it is not true. But it is so quoted with the truth that it looks like the truth. That it looks like the character of God. Because now how Eliphaz is trying to make it look like Job had done something wrong. And now he has, ameisema through life experience, amesema alikuwa na dream, akasema, and some of the things that he says are really true. Because a person cannot be more right than God, which is true. Nobody can be more right than God, and nobody can be more righteous than God, and nobody can be more pure than God. That is true. But when it says, look, God cannot even trust his heavenly servants, is that true? You tell me God does not trust his angels. He says he sees faults even in his angels. And I mean, yes, there's a point where Satan and a third of his angels did something wrong and they were punished and they were tupua duku chini. They were removed from heavenly places. But the 2/3 of the angels that are remaining, you don't tell me that God doesn't trust them, that God finds fault in them, that God is over there now having domains with them. That's not true. He sees fault in every angel. So surely people are worse. So what he's saying is that if God sees fault in angels, then he really must see a lot of faults in us, which is not true, because now we know the other sin, the spiritual realm sin, where we know that is not what was happening in that picture. That is not the reason why Job was going through the suffering. And says, they live in houses of clay built on dust. They can be crushed as easily as moth. From dawn to sunset, people are destroyed. They die, gone forever, and no one even notices. And the ropes of their tents are pulled up, and they die before gaining wisdom. Oh, wow. I don't know whether this is encouraging. When you tell someone who's going through suffering, you are suffering because you are a sinner. And I mean, you're just like a house built out of clay. You can be destroyed. You can be crushed. I mean, people are being destroyed daily. Like, how is that even encouraging? Honestly, like if you break down what Eliphaz is saying, it's not encouraging. It's actually more offensive than encouraging, because you're telling someone who is going through. Can you imagine? Well, put yourself in this scenario. You have lost someone. You are going through grief. Let's call it grief, because that is what Job is going through. He's lost his children. He's 10 children. He's lost his property, and he's in physical pain because he has sores. Now you imagine, you have gone to a mashakaya, you've gone to a matanga, and when that person is crying, you're telling them that the reason why they are going through whatever they are going through is because they are a sinner, because you've never seen, through your experience, your whole life experience, you've never seen someone good being destroyed. And in situation on top of that, now you want to give credit to your persuasion and to your argument by saying that you even saw it in a dream. Like, seriously? Me, I think the only thing that I learned from this chapter, sometimes just shut up. Just shut up. If you don't understand what's happening, just shut up. There's no point of offending someone even more. And sometimes even when we are listening to people, especially when we are in suffering, be very wary of listening to people. Be very wary of people like say, I saw it in a dream, or I had a message, or my life experience. There was even a friend of a friend who went through this. Because people will come up with all those things. They will hear a story about someone they don't even know. But when they're giving that story, that person will be a friend of a friend. They will have brought that stranger story that you don't even know their background, you don't even know what was happening in their lives. They will bring it closer, and it will be a friend of a friend. Or even a brother of my friend. Oh, my cousin. Oh, like they will try everything to give credibility to their story and to their opinion and to the thing that they're trying to persuade you with. But sometimes just silence. Silence is bliss. Silence is good, especially when someone is going through suffering. Don't try and make it their fault, because then you will offend someone. You will really offend someone. And as we will see in, I think, chapter 6, when Job is responding to what Eliphaz is saying, that he really was offended. But anyway, that's chapter 4. Chapter 5 is still Eliphaz speaking, so we are going to get into that as well to just see what else he continues to say. But basically, you see what I was trying to tell you at the introduction, that this whole book is about people's understanding and people's opinion and understanding of why Job is suffering, or them trying to make sense of it. And now you start to realize that this is what is happening. And the same thing happens to us. Even us, we try to make sense of what is happening. Our friends try to make sense of why we are suffering. Our friends, they try so much to make sense of why we are suffering. And sometimes in that trying to make sense, we can really offend someone. Thank you so much for listening, and see you on Monday.